Chapter 48. The Elopement. You shall hear I am run away. Know it before the report come. If there be breadth enough in the world, I will hold a long distance. All's well. Act 3, Scene 1. By the grey morning we had made 800 miles, had crossed Sundora continent, and were coursing over Vordraga Ocean, whose waves roll high. The equatorial group of islands came in view, on reaching which we should be within the seaboard jurisdiction of Mandal Ultima. Machinery being somewhat out of order from the high speed, we descended to a quiet little cove on the shore of a small uninhabited island for repairs, which delayed us 2 hours. We then resumed our journey. The sun was rising in the east, shedding his glories of light and color over the sea. Elphine, who was seated near one of the cabin windows, suddenly uttered an exclamation. I hastened to her. "Look, look!" she said. I looked through the spyglass. Far to the south, and just rising above the horizon, a long line of airships appeared flying to and fro over the waters in various directions. "They are the government air cruisers," she hurriedly whispered. "The swiftest ships in the kingdom, and manned with government officers. Our flight has been discovered. They will arrest us. Great God, what is to be done?" I glanced through the bow window and recognized the magic isle among the group ahead. It was 50 miles distant. "If we can reach that island," I replied, "we are safe. Pedro will conceal us. Are the captain and crew of this ship to be trusted?" "They are honest, faithful, and devotedly attached to my lord and me." "Call the captain, and draw the window curtains. It's daylight. He may recognize that I am not the genuine Lord Chumavat." Elphine drew the curtains. I muffled my face in the cloak and threw myself on the divan. Captain Nabokov entered. "I've just discovered the government cruisers," said he. "They are after us, probably with some important message for your lordship." "Yes," I replied. A different sort of message from what you fancy. The fact is, I've had the bad luck to incur the displeasure of my royal cousin. He is blessed with a very uncertain temper, and I thought it best to make myself previously inconspicuously scarce till it blows over and he gets into a good humor. The devil only knows when that will be. My sweet coz is after me with a sharp stick, and if these infernal cruisers overhaul us, off go your heads for complicity in this little elopement. Nove, Captain, will you stand by me?" "Through thick and thin," he replied with a hearty grasp of my hand. "Call the boys," said I. The crew entered the cabin. I told my story, and they swore by all that was holy that they'd face old Nick himself for his lordship. Damn their eyes if they wouldn't. The cruisers were now rapidly approaching, having discovered us. "Captain," said I, "fly to the magic island. Swift as you can. If we reach there in time, we can hide the ship in the jungle." "All right," he replied. Then to the crew, "Fly low, and the cruisers can't see us so easily." The ship descended and sped over the crests of the high rolling waves like a sea skimmer, the spray whirling around us in showers. In half an hour we reached the island, flew over the long coral reefs and rugged precipices, coursed over the forests and swamps, passed by the great volcano spouting its column of flame and smoke amidst the clouds of sulphurous vapors. Reaching the interior, we cautiously lowered the ship in a deep jungle, filled with tall weeds and grass, which concealed her from view. We dismounted and pushed our way through the underbrush till we emerged into the open glade. In the center stood the Fountain of Youth, its spouting columns and falling showers glittering like gold under the morning sun. To my great joy, I saw Pedro and his sons working in the garden. Telling the captain and crew to remain behind, I took Elphine's hand, and followed by Scamp, we hurried across the glade towards them. Pedro discovered us. "Hello! Boys, here comes the cousin of that devil Deverash. His crew are somewhere around. Call up the dogs." The boys whistled, and 4 huge dogs, bigger and fiercer than even the prison hounds, rushed out from behind the house, bow-wowing and ramping as only such canines can. "Yelp, yelp, yelp!" remarked Scamp, rushing forward like a small cyclone with terrible tornado attachment. The monsters paused, lowering their noses, and their tags began to wag dubiously. "Good morning, Pedro," said I. "How are you?" "You had better call off your big Bowsers, unless you want Scamp to eat them up." "Yep, empathetically replied Scamp, who had not yet taken breakfast, and his jaw opened like a small-sized bear trap. "Clear out of here, you kin of the devil's own," roared Pedro. "Oh, I'm no hurry to go, my venerable friend. I have come to make you an early morning call. Besides, I'm not the kin you refer to." Pedro joyfully recognized me. I told the whole story and introduced my lady Chumavat, alias Tommy. "Hi-ho, an elopement! Really, Lieutenant, I had no idea you were such a gay Lothario. However, all's fair in love, as well as war," said he. "It was I who took the initiative," said my lady. "Oh, I see. A woman's rights movement." "Certainly, we ladies generally take the lead in all charitable and benevolent enterprises." The cruisers were swiftly approaching. "Now for a game of hide-and-seek," said he. "Quick, call your captain and crew." Captain Nabokov and the men came out from the trees. We hurried to the house. Pedro lit a lamp. We descended to the cellar. Its walls and floors were composed of granite slabs. He went to a corner, put his finger through a little hole in the wall, pressed a concealed spring, and one of the great slabs in the wall slowly revolved on its hinges like a door, disclosing a dark vault. We entered. Pedro lit a small taper hanging from the ceiling. The vault was filled with casks and arranged in tiers. "This is the private vault from where our choicest collections of the healing waters are stored for shipment to the palace," said he. "You're safe here. Keep quiet. Utter no sound till I release you." Then, taking the lamp, he passed out and closed the rocky door. As good luck would have it, Scamp was accidentally left outside. After scratching and whining at the door for a while, he squatted down quietly in front of it. In a few moments, 3 of the cruisers reached the island and landed on the glade. The officers debarked. The deputy marshal was called Pedro, who was working in the garden and with his sons. They laid down their tools and came forward. "Hello, old man. Have you seen any airships around here?" "No," he replied, which was the fact. One was seen flying over the waves, disappeared amongst these trees a little while ago." "Never saw her. Trees pretty thick around here. Perhaps she got smashed. Who are you? What are you after?" "Government officers from Sundora. I am the chief. We are here in search of an escaped prisoner. Broke jail." "He must be a pretty cunning old fox to get outside of one of your prisons." "And that was not the worst of it. He's run off with a nobleman's better half in the bargain." "Whew! Worse half, I should say. Happy riddance. I should think his lordship would dance on his head for joy. I don't know you had such a queer going-ons in your kingdom. When you catch the precious pair, pack 'em off to Stormland, where they can get tired of each other and they can storm away to their heart's content." "We must search the island." "Have you a permit from my government?" "No, had no time to get one." "Then you're trespassing here. You've no right." "But I'll take it nevertheless." "Oh yes, that's just the style with you Pluto Martians. Might makes right. Go ahead. Hope you'll find 'em. They're probably billing and cooing somewhere in the bushes," and Pedro resumed his grubbing. The marshal gave his orders. The officers disappeared in all directions, diligently searching the neighboring woods, swamps, etc. Other ships came up, and their crews were detailed to other parts of the island amongst the forests, jungles, and precipices. "Better advise your boys to steer clear of the volcano, unless they wish to be smothered in sulphurous or toasted in lava," suggested Pedro. "We must search your house," said the marshal. "All right. Shall be most happy to aid you. Welcome to my humble domicile." And Pedro led the way. Everywhere everything was searched high and low, rooms, cupboards, trunks, beds. 'Twas like the hunt of Don Alfonso after Don Juan, but the gay Lothario failed to materialize. They finally descended to the cellar and began pounding on the walls with hammers to discover any concealed openings. Suddenly a tremendous blow sounded on the stone door. Scamp began to scratch and whine. The marshal recognized him. "The devil!" he exclaimed. "Why, that's the whelp that belongs to the woman who ran off with the prisoner. I've seen him often. He's the ugliest cur in our kingdom." "Yep," ejaculated Scamp collaboratively. "How did he ever get here?" "Perhaps she dropped him from the airship you saw flying over the trees," replied Pedro. "Then they must be around here somewheres." Our hearts stood in our mouths. It's needless to add that I had mentally anathematized that cursed terrier from the bottom of my heart. "Squee, squee, squee!" squeaked Tommy Topsail in exact imitation of a rat. Oh, it's rats he's after, yawned Pedro.
Yep, yep, yep,
replied Scamp. Rats, 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 bawled Pedro, clapping his hands. Sick 'em, you little devil! Squee, squee, echoed from behind the door. At this moment, one of the big dogs, aroused by his master's voice, came tearing down to the cellar. Yelp, 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 vociferated Yap, flying straight at him. Bow wow, bow wow, bow wow, thundered the big fellow in tones that almost lifted the house off its foundations. Hark, said Pedro, clapping his hands to his ears. Did you hear that rat squeak? Squeak, growled the officer. Good God, sir. The bark of your dog is enough to wake the dead and make the gravestones howl. Come, boys, let's get out of here. I'm not on a rat hunt. And the whole party lumbered up the staircase. We drew a long breath of relief. Lieutenant, whispered Elphine in my ear, you admit that rats are sometimes useful. They are at a premium on this occasion, at all events, I replied. Officer, queried Pedro as they passed out from the house, who is this fellow that you say broke jail and ran off with a nobleman's wife? A terrible white barbarian from the planet Earth, he replied. He must be pretty hard up for a wife to come all the way at here after one. Women must be scarce on that planet. Perhaps he has the mitten so often that he wants to try his luck on another planetary feminine production. Or perhaps he's just an escaped bigamist. Who knows, replied the marshal. Perhaps he's a chronic destroyer of domestic bliss, remarked Pedro. Why didn't he go to Venus? The women are all Venuses, and have pretty faces, and easy too, I'm told, said the marshal. Or to Mercury. The women are slippery and quicksilver there, run off whenever they can get a chance, said Pedro. After several hours, the searching party returned, covered with dust and mud, clothes torn, faces and hands scratched with thorns and brambles, bitten and stung by insects. They dolefully recounted their hairbreadth escapes from the monsters and reptiles of the swamps, the bats and the feathered gorgons of the caverns and forests. They had searched everywhere with a patience and persistence that would have aroused the admiration of the Russian nihilist detectives, the Parisian police, Pinkerton boys, Scotland Yard deacons, and the U.S. Secret Service combined. But the great mistake they made was that they overdid the business, searched every place but the right place. The marshal swore at them roundly, called them a set of asses, ordered them to go over the ground again, and that was all the satisfaction they got. In the meantime, as the hours dragged wearily on, we were in a state of mind better imagined than described. Late in the afternoon, the searching parties returned, completely fagged out and disgruntled. Other cruisers coming up, the marshal ordered them off to search the other islands and announced his intention to remain overnight. Pedro treated him and his party courteously, offering them draughts of the healing waters, which, combined with the wine they had drunk, made them quite merry. He dilated largely on the wonders and beauties of the cavern beneath the fountain, and they expressed a desire to visit them. So he unlocked the great door, and the whole party, headed by Pedro's eldest son, torch in hand, descended the staircase. Pedro quietly closed and locked the door. Good, chuckled he. Safely stowed. Run, my boy, and let the other prisoners out. The boy ran to the house and rushed down to the cellar, turned the key and let us out. Where are the police? Whispered Tommy. Pap's got 'em locked up in the steam box, giggled the lad. Going to cook 'em. We rushed up the staircase to the glade. Caged, said Pedro with a grin. We all congratulated him on his wonderful finesse, and Tommy celebrated the event with a vigorous hornpipe. Haste! Go get your airship, said Pedro, and the captain and the crew ran to the jungle. We sauntered over the glade for a while. Finally, a loud pounding and smothered voices were heard from behind the iron door. Now we'll have some fun, said Pedro. Hello! There, old fellow! Bawled the marshal. Well, gentlemen, what do you wish? Let us out. Have you seen all you wish to see? Seen? Who the devil can see anything in this hole? The torch has gone out. Open the door. That's what I'm trying to do, twisting the key in all directions but the right one. What's the matter with the door? Bawled the marshal. It won't open. Stuck fast, tugging at the key. What the devil did you shut it for? We have to shut it to keep the rats from running out. The cavern's full of them, replied Pedro's boy. I've turned on the steam a little, whispered Pedro. But your son? Queried Elphine. Oh, he's used to it. Confound you! Why don't you open this infernal door? Roared the marshal. We're getting steamed alive in here. The electricity is beginning to fly around. Our hair is standing on end, cried several. Steam baths and electrical cure all the ills flesh air all steam baths and electricity cure all the ill flesh hair, ills flesh is heir to, enunciated Pedro. You'll come out new men. Open the door for God's sake, rolled the whole crowd, Unma voice. Shall have to break it down. We'll take an hour, perhaps to do it. You'll have to stand it out as best you can. But we shall have all been boiled or electrocuted to death, groaned the crowd. Pap, shall I get the hammers and wedges? Queried the young one. Yes, sonny, but you needn't be in a hurry about it. The hammers and wedges were finally brought, and Pedro and his son began to pound at the door like a pair of professional safe burglars. The airship now came sailing over the trees and lighted on the sward. Get aboard and be off, said Pedro. You've got 600 miles to travel. It's now 5 o'clock, and if you make good speed, you'll get to the place in time for a late supper. I'll go on with my hydropathic and electropathic treatment till you get well out of sight. Then I'll turn the key the right way and let 'em out. We hurried aboard. The ship rose from the sward, spread her wings, and flew over the forests and precipices towards the sea. I retired to the rear cabin, by the aid of a chemical wash, removed my disguise, and resumed my uniform, as it was not prudent to appear before the captain and crew in propria persona at present. I entered an alcove, while my lady took her seat near a window in the forward cabin.